Very annoying. Okay. I've never seen so many police in my life. Never before, never since. But it was broken down to me like this by a narcotics division detective. I had two choices at this point. They could and would get a search warrant for my grandma's house. And in which case they would come with a SWAT team, assault rifles, the whole 9 yards. Or I could sign a piece of paper waiving my Fourth Amendment right to search and seizure, and this would, of course, allow them to enter my grandma's house. I negotiated a little bit with the narcotics division, but of course they had all the leverage, and they told me that they were open to the idea that if I signed that piece of paper, then I could go there with them, and we would calmly walk from room to room of the house so that they could make sure there wasn't an active clandestine laboratory, and so that they could make sure that there was nothing particularly destructive or dangerous in that home. I just believed them, and like before, and this would seem to be a recurring pattern with me in my encounters with law enforcement, whether that was the FBI or the state police, the sheriff department, that they were really fair with me. My soon-to-be or at the present time co-conspirator. See, this thing likes to drop out, so I'm just gonna let it. What a disaster this connection is. This is disgusting. So they could walk with me room to room. My soon-to-be co-conspirator was relatively crazy with law enforcement, but I was very calm and very relaxed with them. And I think that this served me greatly. I rode from the Costume Castle Guitar Center parking lot at Lake Forest and Rockfield with a narcotics division detective. I believe we were in a Honda Odyssey. It was maybe a maroon-colored or silver-colored soccer mom van, essentially. I was in the passenger seat, and the detective was in the driver's seat. On the way to the house, we talked very little, but we did talk a little bit, and he asked me, or I guess I asked him, hey, I noticed that you guys said you found this particular quantity of methamphetamine on us, and but I also noticed that you weighed the container, the bag that the now when we were raided there at the Costume Castle, there was actually like numerous bags and containers of drugs, chemicals, and equipment. Let me set this to lunch. Hopefully we can maybe experience some buffering. Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna re-upload this if you guys have any, because I've actually started the recording. So, and he said, "Well, that's just an approximate weight." I remember telling him that I kind of objected to that methodology, but of course I was the degenerate offender with very little room to negotiate. We arrived in the neighborhood at Morning Ridge and Allenwood Lane, and We waited until everybody else got there. There were other detectives, other units that were responding to this particular event, and we walked together up to the... And I wasn't in handcuffs yet, actually. We walked together up to the house, got to the front door. Of course, I unlocked the door, and we all walked in together. Behind me was at least 4 or 5 other deputies with assault rifles. And they, of course, checked room to room as we went downstairs, through in towards the staircase in the house. And numerous other law enforcement officers were with us, and got upstairs. By this time, it's probably about 11 o'clock at night or so. We were in that parking lot while they did field tests, and they collected and cataloged evidence that was found on our property. A lot of that was chemicals and drugs, and they knocked on my grandma's bedroom door, Orange County Sheriff's Department. We're here looking for a meth lab. My grandma woke up and came out into that little landing at the top of the stairs, and the Sheriff's Department went into my room. My room was such a mess at this point that they didn't really search it. And so I remember the deputy that went into my room with an AR-15 and one of those long ones, they're like an M16 more than an M4. Went into my room, and he looked around. He said, "You need to clean your room, kid." I said, "Yeah, I know." They found a sheet of paper that had the prices of K-Packs, which is, as I've described, 1,000 Xanax bars. They were under the impression that this meant a pound of meth, but the investigative reasoning behind that was that they compared the prices of those K-Packs with the approximate prices of pounds of meth at the time on the street. And they seized that piece of paper, and that was, of course, scanned into evidence and so forth. After this, we departed the house, and I had a pack of Marlboro Reds on me. He put it on the window, the dining room window on the outside of the house, and I said, "Can I have one of those cigarettes before we go?" They said, "No, but if you get to come home tonight, then you can do that." Throughout this period of time, that the police were telling me that there was a possibility that I'd come home that night, and so I kind of clung to this hope that somehow I would be allowed to, not be taken into custody. But of course, this was a pipe dream. So we got to there was a rendezvous point that was scheduled, kind of a staging area. Law enforcement officers were gathered in the parking lot at Stater Brothers, which is right at the corner of La Paz and Pacific Park Drive, basically. And my co-conspirator, my co-defendant, my soon-to-be co-defendant, John Malik, was in a separate vehicle. We were all in separate vehicles. All the different officers and people, and my co-defendant's in another vehicle. And they do this because they separate you so that you can't communicate and you can't coordinate your own counter response of some kind. So at this point, I didn't know quite yet that Drama was telling them everything. But I had told him previously, in fact, probably within days before this, that if we were ever caught, that this was my operation and that I would take the fall for everything. And so I had to stand by that claim. And he took them up on the hillside that the corner of La Paz and Pacific Park was a hillside with a gutter in it, and you could overlook Stater Brothers and Target and look down onto the parking lot. He took them up there. We had done a recrystallization on that hillside earlier that same day. Unbeknownst to me, he told them that he put a 50 caliber sniper rifle and an AR-15 in the gutter in the leaves just to mess with them. So he had the police, searching through the leaves and everything, knowing, of course, that no such thing was there, but just trying to troll them. That's the kind of guy he was. Kind of funny, but not really the right place and time for that. He didn't care. Police searched that gutter, found basically nothing, as far as I remember. But we got back down to the bottom of the hillside there, and at one point, they had me step out of the vehicle that I was waiting in. At this point, I think I had been transferred from a civilian vehicle to a civilian type vehicle to an actual marked police cruiser. I was then taken out of that vehicle, and one particular officer or deputy said to me, okay, go ahead, put your hands behind your back, blah, blah, blah. Began putting handcuffs on, and he told me, you're under arrest. And I said, what for? He said, for the manufacture of methamphetamine. And at that time, when that happened, that was pretty much a wrap. And I actually skipped over something, but it's okay, we can go into it. There were 2 times in my life, really, that I felt what I'll describe as an apathetic blank, I guess. The first time was when Jama had taken me to a place called Arvin, and on the ride there convinced me that I was going to be killed and buried in the desert. I very much believed him, and I knew that I could not do anything about that at that time. I was basically his captive. And in that moment, I felt nothing at all, no fear, nothing. It just was what it was, just blank. And this was because I was certain I was going to die. That was the one time, and the other time that I really felt that was the moment that they took me into custody. Stream bitrate. Jesus. Okay, so I'm just going to re-upload this. This looks like trash. Sorry. And at this time, now handcuffed and under arrest, Jama and I were put into the same cruiser, and we were driven from the 73 in La Paz, or roughly adjacent to Stater Brothers and next to the Chevron gas station there. We were driven from there to the main jail of Orange County. On that ride, Jama said, is there going to be any issue of me telling the police? And I told him, no, this was, just like I always said, that this was my operation, and if anything goes wrong, I would take the fall. We got to the main jail there, and the charges were read off to me in the loop. The charges were as follows: manufacture of methamphetamine, conspiracy to manufacture methamphetamine, possession of methamphetamine with the intent to sell, possession of methamphetamine, and possession of Xanax. So there were 3 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. Much of that time in the jail, that 3 days, I was tired and mostly asleep, but I was taken on, I think, day 2 or 3, probably day 3. I was taken to arraignment at the CJX, the video court, and housed in a cell with, 20, 30 other people. And one by one, we were called into our arraignment, brought into the courtroom in a cage, appearing in custody for arraignment. And the public defender that was assigned to me prior to this hearing that I was just moments away from going into. Broke everything down to me, and he said, okay, here's what you're charged with. You're charged with what I named to you. The sentencing guidelines for each one of these charges is as follows. The conspiracy to methamphetamine sentencing guideline is 10 years. The manufacture is 3, 5, or 7 years. And the sales was 3 to 5 years. He said altogether the maximum time that you're facing is 22 years. I'm going to advise you to plead not guilty to these charges at arraignment. And he said, this is your first arrest? And I said, yes. He said, well, you certainly started out at the top. And I did as he advised. I pled not guilty. To my surprise, in the arraignment, the judge recommended, or the judge rather ordered, that I be released on my own recognizance. It's called an OR, because it was my first arrest. And because it was a nonviolent crime. And I got back to my cell, which was the alpha tank of the Orange County Main Jail. There was one cool guy that was in that room with me. I think his name was J.T. Carroll. Really nice guy. And there was another guy, I don't remember his name either, but these two guys were really cool with me, and they kind of helped me get through that initial 3 days. They told me that I think that part of it was every time that I would every time that someone would ask me what I was there for, and I told them I was in there, charged with manufacturing meth, I was very paranoid. I didn't want to tell anyone I was here for manufacturing meth because I was worried that would get used against me. I'm not sure if that's how that works, but at the time that's what I was worried about. But every time I told someone what I was there for, they instantly would lighten up and become my best friend. And there was one guy who kept trying to buy my Serax, which is a little red pill they give you when you get to jail to put you to sleep. It's used for people who are in a benzo withdrawal, and there's one guy who kept trying to buy my Serax, and I was telling him, well, I'm here for selling drugs, allegedly, and I don't want to sell drugs in the jail and then get myself in more trouble. I don't know how any of this works, and I was nervous. And JT and another guy told me, oh, that guy's smoked out of the game, don't listen to him, blah, blah, blah. But everybody was really cool with me. I had absolutely no problems with any other individuals in that place. I think because of my charges, they were just really intrigued by me, and they helped me get through that. And I went to the guy, not JT, but the other guy. I went to him, and I can't remember his name. And I said, "Hey, I just got back from arraignment, and they told me I'm getting OR'd. What does that mean?" And he's like, "That means you're getting out." And I didn't really believe him, because I had been calling my family, I had been calling everybody, and pretty much the only advice they gave for me was, you better start studying the law, because you're going to have to fight a serious case. And I was just so overwhelmingly scared of that concept that I was trapped there for a long time, it seemed, or I was going to be. And I couldn't believe that they were going to release me on day 3. So he said, yeah, man, probably tomorrow or whatever in the morning, they're going to tell you to roll up, and that means get all your things, and they're going to release you. You're going to go down to receiving a discharge, or whatever it's called, and you're going to get let out. Now, you're still fighting the case, but Jama had bailed out the day before. I remember feeling some envy of that. I was like, this son of a bitch. But he was he was like a brother in arms to me, regardless of what happened, you know. And I understood why he was scared and why he told on tried to shift. He had tried to put everything off on me and say that I was like pressuring and scaring him into compliance with my operation. And but I understood that because we were facing 22 years in prison, and who wouldn't, basically. So I'm not working with John Gotti here. So, I got out. My parents got me into a rehab, but I was there for about a week. And during that week, I knew that there was going to be a bunch of Xanax. Remember when we left Aliso Viejo and went up to Lake Forest that day, we had a lot of mail coming from different places and landing in all these different mail drops and boxes, and I felt like that was all going to get intercepted because now I was under the heavy watch of law enforcement from being arrested. When you get caught, they watch the hell out of you, especially your OR, and then they follow you around. I was stopped multiple times per day at this point. Just basically homeless, but not sleeping. I was on meth still. I met with Chevrolet. I had some money that was returned to me when I was released. That had been on my person when we were caught. And I spent some of this money on meth and basically stayed awake for about 3 weeks. Out on the street. And, first, they got me in this rehab, and I was really, I felt like I was in the wrong place. Like, I wasn't supposed to be in there because I still had so many things to deal with when on the outside world. I had mail coming here, there, different places. And my fear was that stuff was all going to get intercepted and they were going to charge me with federal crimes too. So I left what's called AMA, against medical advice, from that rehab facility, and I was in Hemet, California, which is a total shithole, by the way. I booked a motel room in Hemet, and the motel was so cheap that it didn't have an internet connection, so I was walking from the motel to the Starbucks down the street, and I was utilizing that Starbucks' Wi-Fi connection to try to cancel orders that were coming to different places and to try to get my money returned to me. I also had some money in the escrow on the market, and I also had a vendor account on Alphabay for shipping meth. And one of those walks to Starbucks, I tried to log into Alphabay and it had gone down. Now let's look up the closure of Alphabay. I'll tell you exactly when this was all going down. Alphabay, when did Alphabay close? On July 5th, 2017, the closure was officially announced. So this... July 20th. On July 5th, 2017, Thai authorities, with help from the FBI, arrested the site's Canadian creator, Alexandre Kazis, in Bangkok, Thailand. So July 5th, I guess, was the time that this happened. I tried to log into the Alphabay, and it was down. The seizure notice hadn't been posted, but you couldn't connect to the server. And there went all of the Bitcoin that was in escrow, and there went my vendor market account wallet. Some of those packages had already been shipped, so when I left that rehab, I was on the run for about 3 weeks in Aliso Viejo. Just, running around, doing meth, and trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do. But one of these Xanax packages landed, and as soon as I picked it up, and I was immediately robbed on the very first attempt at selling some of it by an individual named Keith Lyles, who strong-arm robbed me for several hundred Xanax bars. Probably saved my life in many ways. I could have been in a lot more trouble trying to sell that, but thank God I was robbed. And of course, at the time, I didn't see that, so I was on a rampage, and I told Chevrolet that I wanted to kill that guy, and I wanted him and his entire family murdered. And he calmed me down. But I did basically conspire to retaliate for that robbery. And thank God for Chevy too, because Chevy was smart enough, calm enough to know that that was a really stupid idea. Chevy gave me some money. He was a really good friend all the way to the end, and we became really good friends before he was deported from the United States in December of 2018. By the end, we really got to know each other, and we really respected each other a lot. Like, he knew that I was with the business, and he knew that I was a stand-up guy in that realm. And he really helped me out, like, not getting myself in more trouble. He gave me enough money to kind of float along for a little bit, and then I went back into a treatment center. And that went the end of my criminal operations. I tried in a sober living to, several months later, I tried to get back into the business, but nothing was ever the same again. And Jama and I spent one more day running around together. And the last time that I saw Jama, he was walking down a street at night into the distance. He told me, "I'm fucking done. I don't want to do any of this anymore." And we're both where we were just done. It was too intense for us to handle anymore, and that was the last time I ever saw him. We talked a few more times over the next couple of years, and he was found dead of a drug overdose in June 2022. One of the guys that I was selling drugs out of a sober living with for a couple of weeks or so was named Hunter Osborne, and he died too. And this series is partially dedicated to him. But once I was caught that day, it was just never able to do that again. It was nothing was ever the same. And I didn't stay sober forever, but I never was a criminal like that again. And only now, or only in the last few years, have I been able to see that situation for what it was, that I was captured and I was stopped from a pathway that was going to lead me to death. I was either going to be robbed and killed, or killed for my property or for my assets, or I was going to be arrested and imprisoned. And I didn't know that or care at that time, but looking back, I know that that's how that would have went down, and the police stopped me from that. God stopped me from that. So I was going to do this as a separate episode, but it was easier to tell the arrest story than I thought it might be, and I'm sure I'm missing some things throughout this series, but it's okay. The purpose of this hasn't been to tell you war stories. The purpose of this, and the moral of this story, has been that when you go into this way of life, generally the people who go into this way of life have never experienced this way of life when they get into it, and by the end of it, they're either dead or they're chewed up, spit out, and fucked up. And many of my friends from that era are dead. Not all of them, or not most of them, but a lot of them, And that happened because of that lifestyle and those choices. Jacob McKelvey, Doobie Snacks, was killed April 1st, 2021, by an individual named Jason Sue Healy, who's now serving several years in a federal prison for his role in a interstate fentanyl conspiracy. And he, for all intents and purposes, murdered Jacob McKelvey by selling him cocaine laced with fentanyl knowingly. And McKelvey was found dead in his parents' room on April 1st, 2021, the same day we were supposed to hang out. And he suddenly went dark, stopped responding. I found out about a month later that he was dead. And then a year after that, Drama was found dead too. And there are very few outcomes for a person who goes into a life of crime and a life of drugs. Those outcomes are either a substantial prison sentence, a lonely death in an isolated location with no one to revive them, or a recovery from that way of life, and those are the only outcomes that you can have. You do not get to sustain that lifestyle and have a happy ending. There is only the cessation of that lifestyle or its destruction of one. So in closing, in conclusion, it could have been that it could have gone that way, but it isn't that way today. So if you're one of these kids that saw these fucktarded shows on Netflix like How to Sell Drugs Online and Make Money Fast, or you saw your rap heroes talk about fat stacks and mucho drogas, just take it from an old head like who made it out. That whatever glamour you think you're going to get, whatever fucking success you think you're going to have, it's not going to go that way. You're either going to come out of it the other side and beat the odds. I mean, I beat the odds, really. Someone who lived like that. Usually the people that live like that don't make it out alive. But if you think that that's what you're going to do and it's going to be glorious and it's going to be cool, just make sure to bring a will and testament. And make sure to bring money for your bail, because those are what's going to happen to you if you do that stuff. Or just turn away now before you do. Because like I said, bring a will and testament or bring money for your bail. And that's in a lawyer. But that's what's going to happen if you watch on Netflix how to sell drugs online and make money fast. Dumbest fucking bullshit I've ever seen in my life. That the creators of that show should be ashamed of themselves. I hope they are. Because what they're pushing on the society and what they're glorifying and what they're acting like is cool isn't fucking cool at all. At all. Because when I was in the Alpha tank of the Orange County Main Jail, I didn't have anything anymore. I didn't have an operation anymore. I had no money, no glory, no fame, no excitement. I was fucking scared. And nobody wanted anything to do with me because they would either get in trouble from being around me or they would get their life run over by a steamroller for being around me. And so if you think, I want to sell drugs online and make money fast like Netflix fucking told you, just don't listen to them, because you're going to be in a jail cell or in a coffin. I guarantee you that's what will happen from that way of life. and you won't make money fast. Your money will cost you some really powerfully delivered life lessons, and if you're not really fucking strong, you'll be lucky if you come out of that unscathed or anything. So, fuck you, creators of that movie. But what you're teaching these kids is terrible, and same with the rap artists. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing a lot of that start to fizzle out. I always knew, because what happens is the people that think that shit's cool or die or go to jail, and then no one cares what they think anymore, and so eventually there's a natural selection process that happens, and no one's listening to that shit anymore. This thing is fucked. Life today is really cool and good, and I don't need Netflix's drug money, and I don't need the jail cell that they deliver, because these posers, really, 98% of your rap artist heroes and your Scarface, Tony Montana fucking heroes, whatever, are a bunch of fucking posers who have never seen any of that shit in real life. They're fucking losers, and they pretend that they've seen those things so that they can trick you into destroying yourself. That's their goal. And that's the moral of the story. That if you work a job, whatever, it might suck, but it doesn't suck like selling drugs online and trying to make money fast. So it's better to just not do that. This series and this story, whether it's missing some components or not, I no longer care. Just happy to get those morals of the stories across for you guys. Is dedicated to the loving memory of Jacob Dalon, Renzi McKelvey, John Malake, Michael A. Carpenter, Hunter Osborne, Joey Nigerian, and many others who fell in the pursuit of their drug addictions, but were not included in my life of crime because they either came after or didn't really have much of a role in all that. And yeah. That's the big war story.